Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics and really pull out the key insights for you. Today, we're diving into some fascinating source material. It covers a really pivotal time in, well, the long story of Iran's nuclear program and the secret operations against it. Our mission today, to figure out how a change in leadership, a big one at a key international agency, combined with some pretty audacious spy operations, really shook up Iran's nuclear ambitions. We'll look at everything international pressure, those mysterious explosions, what it all means. Let's connect some important dots. Okay, let's get into it. The sources point to a turning point, right? About 2.5 years after that big Israeli raid on Iran's secret nuclear archive, the archive stuff had already, played a role in the U.S. leaving the Iran deal, the JCPOA, and gave spies new leads, but there was another huge goal: pushing the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to act more forcefully.
Exactly. And what's really interesting here, according to the sources, is that it wasn't just the archive info driving this shift. There was a major change right at the top of the IAEA itself. New leadership, new style, new substance. It changed everything.
Right. Tell us about that change. Who was in charge before?
Well, for nearly 10 years, you had Yukiya Amano, a Japanese diplomat known for being pretty reserved, tight-lipped. His investigation style was slow, painstaking, and crucially, from Israel's viewpoint, he tended to kind of dampen down any urgency based on Mossad's findings about Iran.
Okay, so a cautious bureaucrat, very low-key, and then his replacement came in.
That's right. Amano passed away in July 2019. Later that year, Rafael Grossi took over. He's an Argentinian diplomat born back in '61. He joined their foreign service in '85, and importantly, he wasn't new to the IAEA. He'd been chief of staff under a previous director, El Baradei, handled tough talks with North Korea, Iran, even served as deputy director general from 2010 to 2013, so he knew the ropes. He officially started December 3rd, 2019.
Okay, and this is where things really start to heat up. The sources paint Grossi as totally different. Loquacious, high energy, goes by instinct.
Yeah.
A stark contrast. What did that mean for Iran?
It meant fireworks, basically, immediate confrontation. Grossi saw the value in that Mossad archive data. He wasn't going to just sit on it or ignore violations. He went straight at Iran about their undeclared nuclear work. Iran, of course, pushed back hard.
How did they push back?
They accused the IAEA of bias, saying validating Mossad's intel meant the agency was taking sides, trying to discredit the messenger,
So what specific issues did Grossi really zero in on then?
The core questions were, was Iran hiding uranium enrichment? What about past experiments related to weapons, other secret nuclear weapons work? He pushed them on these points publicly. Late 2019, early 2020, he wasn't letting it go.
And then the evidence started piling up publicly, right? Leaks and confirmations.
Yes. March 3rd, 2020, a leaked document. It showed Grossi had privately flagged a serious violation. Iran had nearly tripled its stockpile of low-enriched uranium. They were just 30 kilograms short of the amount needed, potentially, for a bomb's worth of highly enriched uranium. Then Grossi went public, confirming Mossad's claim about that secret uranium warehouse at Turksabad. Said they found traces there. People describe this as fighting words coming from the IAEA, which usually avoids drama.
Wow, yeah. That's a definite shift. So where did this tougher stance lead internationally?
Well, early June 2020, another leaked Grossi report. This one showed Iran had cranked out another 500 kilos of low-enriched uranium. Grossi warned that at that rate, they could have enough material for 2 bombs within maybe 3 months. Understandably, the Israelis folks like Intelligence Minister Eli Cohen and Mossad Chief Yossi Cohen were reportedly very happy with Grossi's public pressure. And the culmination, June 19th, the IAEA Board of Governors formally condemned Iran, first time since before the 2015 deal. Israel felt this stripped Iran of any, quote, moral high ground.
Okay, so that IAEA condemnation, it created this moral cover Israel apparently wanted. Our sources describe the Mossad director, Eli Cohen, as having been really eager, itching to hit Iran, even salivating, apparently. But he felt held back while Iran seemed to be sticking to the nuclear deal, at least on paper. So what happened once that condemnation landed?
If you look at the bigger picture the sources lay out, it suggests a major shift. A much more aggressive Israeli strategy was greenlit. The sources literally say Cohen felt like the pistol had been fired for the start of a race. He could finally unleash the Mossad's capabilities.
And what a race indeed. The picture painted is intense. From late June to mid-July 2020, Iran's facilities just get hammered, pummeled almost nonstop, the sources say.
Oh,
attend mysterious explosions, fires, and other accidents. What kind of places were getting hit?
Really crucial targets. Iran's most advanced facility for assembling centrifuges, a petrochemical plant, a power grid, their biggest missile site, One description was like the whole country was surrounded by volcanoes, just boom, boom, boom.
Let's break down a couple of those. The first ones happened right after that IAEA vote, didn't they?
Almost immediately, June 26th, 2020. A fire hits a power station in Shiraz, big blackouts. Same day, later on, a massive explosion tears apart the Covert missile facility. That's just east of Tehran. An opposition group, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, claimed Covert housed a secret defense ministry unit working on nuclear warheads for missiles. Codename B-1 Nori 8500.
So definitely not just, faulty wiring. These targets seem highly strategic.
Absolutely. Now, initially, Israeli and U.S. officials denied involvement off the record for the Covert blast. But our sources explicitly link Covert and other sites hit later, like Natanz, Sinai Hospital, Avaz, Karun, directly to Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions. For instance, a former U.S. Air Force cyber intel guy, Josh Bardin, noted Sinai Medical's ties to Tehran University's nuclear medicine department, and a nuclear facility in Avaz that was actually marked on one of the maps grabbed in that Mossad archive heist.
But Iran tried to downplay it, didn't they?
Yeah.
What was their official story for Covert?
Yeah, they claimed it was just a gas explosion, and not even at Covert, but nearby at the Parchin military complex. But satellite photos told a different story. They clearly showed damage at Covert, specifically a building used by Iran's space industries. Two key groups were housed there, one making solid rocket fuel, the other making liquid fuel for ballistic missiles. Both damaged.
Which brings us to the how and the who. How were these attacks done, and who was really behind them? Cyber attacks.
That was a major theory. Sources in Israel and elsewhere floated the idea of a kinetic cyber weapon, like malware causing physical destruction. Think Stuxnet, the virus that wrecked Iranian centrifuges back in 2009. An American analyst, Theodore Karasik, said the consensus seemed to be a cyber strike by Israel. Iran officially wouldn't admit sabotage that would reveal security failures, but Western intelligence and sources inside Iran pointed fingers. Many incidents were seen as covert Israeli ops, maybe sometimes with U.S. help. An Israeli defense official was quoted saying the goal was simply for the Iranians to feel considerable stress.
And all this wasn't happening in a vacuum, politically speaking. There was the upcoming U.S. election.
Definitely part of the context. European intelligence analysts speculated Israel might be trying to provoke Iran before the November U.S. election. The fear was a potential Democratic administration might be less willing to back such aggressive actions. You also had a strike in Syria on June 27th, killing pro-Iranian militia. Reportedly, just after the IRGC Quds Force Commander Ghani had visited the site, that, plus the Covert blast within 24 hours, it was a big blow to Iran's image. And maybe, just maybe, a useful distraction for the Israeli public from Netanyahu delaying West Bank annexation plans.
Okay, so a series of significant hits. Yeah. But the sources suggest these were almost like warm-up acts, preliminaries for an even bigger strike just days later. At Natanz, the heart of Iran's uranium enrichment program. What happened there?
Right. July 2nd, 2020. The initial reports coming out of Iran were deliberately vague. They mentioned an incident. At a building under construction near Natanz, they stressed, not the main facility itself. They denied any damage to the enrichment halls or the reactor. But pretty quickly it became obvious something major had happened. A fire, maybe an explosion, something serious.
And Natanz is all about the centrifuges, right? Those machines spinning uranium gas. Why is that facility so critical?
Exactly. Natanz, about 200 miles south of Tehran, is where they spin uranium hexafluoride gas at incredible speeds to enrich uranium. The key thing is which centrifuges they were using. Before the 2015 deal, it was mainly the older, slower IR-1s. But intelligence agencies were warning Iran was installing much faster advanced models. The IR-2 meter, the IR-4, these can enrich uranium maybe 4 times, maybe up to 50 times faster. They're even testing super advanced ones, IR-8s and IR-9s.
And why are these advanced centrifuges such a big deal? Faster enrichment?
Yes, speed is crucial. They allow a much faster breakout to weapon-grade uranium if Iran decided to go for a bomb. And because they're more efficient, you need fewer of them. That makes them easier to hide in smaller, potentially secret facilities.
So back to the incident. Despite Iran's initial vagueness, what was the reality? Accident. Sabotage.
Well, the debate was on. Technical glitches had broken centrifuges before, but David Albright, head of the Institute for Science and International Security, was skeptical. He said, basically, accidents don't happen at these kind of facilities. He felt it looked like sabotage, a high-value target like Natanz.
Suspicious. And then this mysterious group popped up claiming they did it.
Yeah, very cloak and dagger stuff. Middle of the night, July 2nd to 3rd, emails arrived at the New York Times, the BBC, from a group nobody had ever heard of, the Homeland Cheetahs, claiming they sabotaged Natanz, caused a big fire, extensive damage. But the sources immediately raised doubts. Was this group real? Or was it, quote, a classic spy world disinformation campaign, a false flag?
What evidence pointed towards sabotage, maybe by a state actor, rather than just dissidents or an accident?
Well, NASA satellite pictures confirmed a big fire at Natanz, and the location and type of damage seemed to match details in those Cheetah's emails. Plus, the group quickly released a slick propaganda video. Making something like that takes time, planning. It strongly suggested they knew about the explosion before it happened, all pointing towards a sophisticated operation by a major intelligence agency. And later, Mossad director Eli Cohen himself dropped hints about Mossad's involvement in an interview.
So if he was Mossad, how did they pull it off? The sources mentioned some pretty wild methods, hiding bombs in catering trucks.
It sounds like fiction, but yes, the sources detail two alleged methods. One was flipping scientists, convincing them to quit, or maybe even spy for Mossad. Sometimes they apparently thought they were helping an Iranian opposition group, not Israel directly. Those who helped were reportedly smuggled out, given new lives. The second method, infiltrating the supply chain. Mossad agents posing as, say, construction suppliers. This supposedly let them plant explosives inside the main centrifuge assembly hall, the A1000 building, while it was being built. Some bombs hidden right in the structure, others allegedly snuck in with food deliveries. The Iranians apparently even knew their supply chains were compromised, but felt kind of powerless to fully stop it.
So faced with mounting evidence, what did Iran eventually admit happened?
On July 5th, the spokesman for Iran's nuclear agency finally conceded there was significant damage from the fire at Natanz. But weirdly, he gave no cause, maybe trying to hide how bad their security was. The spokesman, Behrouz Kamalvandi, did admit the incident could slow down making advanced centrifuges in the medium term.
Medium term, significant damage. Sounds like they were still downplaying it. What did external sources reveal about the actual extent?
Oh, much worse. On July 6th, the Middle Eastern intelligence official flat out told reporters Israel was behind it, using a powerful bomb. An IRGC member reportedly confirmed explosives were used, too. Israel's state officially mum, Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, just said, "We take actions that are better left unsaid." Very coy. But then, David Albright dropped the real bombshell, so to speak, on July 9th. He revealed it wasn't just some damage. He said 3/4 of the main centrifuge assembly hall had been destroyed. This was the place they put together core parts, the rotor assemblies, for those advanced centrifuges. Suddenly, talk of a few days or weeks delay became years, although in the end, the actual delay turned out to be closer to 9 months. Still significant.
Wow, 3/4 destroyed. So what was the bottom line impact on Iran's nuclear program?
Seema Shine, who used to head Iran analysis at Mossad, summed it up. The main hit was to Iran's future capabilities, their ability to quickly break out towards a weapon. It didn't really touch their existing uranium stockpile, but it crippled their ability to make more enriched uranium quickly using those advanced machines. She also explained Iran saw those advanced centrifuges as valuable bargaining chips, cards, for future nuclear talks. Especially looking ahead to a potential Biden administration, they hope to have lots of advanced centrifuges running, making them harder to negotiate away. The Natanz strike just blew up those plans, that leverage.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still begs the question. With so many successful attacks, the archive raid, Covert, Natanz, others, how did Iran's security and counter-spy agencies keep failing? The sources talk about a total intelligence breakdown.
Yeah.
What was going on inside Iran?
Well, connecting the dots here points to a really damaging internal fight, a turf war within Iran's own intelligence community. Basically, between 2009 and 2021, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, dramatically overshadowed Iran's traditional spy agency, the Ministry of Intelligence and Security, or MOIS used to have a near monopoly on intelligence. And ironically, this power shift to the IRGC actually helped Western agencies, especially Mossad. Why? Because MOIS was generally seen as more professional, more skilled at counterintelligence than the IRGC.
So what were the key differences between MOI and the IRGC in terms of what they focus on, their skills?
The IRGC's intelligence arm was newer, and its main focus became domestic issues, crushing dissent, internal security. MOI, on the other hand, had decades of experience as a classic foreign intelligence service, good at recruiting agents abroad, sophisticated counterspying. They were the ones who reportedly dismantled a lot of the CIA's network in Iran between 2010 and 2014.
And these different priorities and skills led to clashes.
Absolutely. Leaked MOI cables confirmed it. MOI's worried about stability in neighboring Iraq, Sunni militants, sectarian conflicts, things that could spill over. The IRGC. Their priority in Iraq was keeping it as basically a client state. ensuring loyal Shia militias stayed in charge, often using covert military force. A prime example. The IRGC carried out a massacre of Sunnis in Jufal Sakar in 2014. Moise saw this as terrible for Iran's long-term influence. Funnily enough, the CIA apparently agreed with Moise on that one.
It sounds like this reflects a bigger split within the Iranian regime itself.
It does. The Moise view aligned more with the so-called pragmatic camp around then-President Rouhani. The IRGC was backed by the hardliners and, crucially, by Supreme Leader Khamenei. Khamenei actually seemed to encourage this rivalry. He didn't want any single figure becoming too powerful, a potential challenger. So he deliberately pitted IRGC against Moise, giving the IRGC more power partly to weaken Rouhani, who technically oversaw Moise. Khamenei also consistently favored the IRGC over Iran's regular army. By 2018-19, the IRGC's budget was reportedly 3 times larger than the entire regular military's budget.
So Khamenei's strategy made the IRGC incredibly powerful, but maybe spread them too thin, created a blind spot.
Precisely. The IRGC got huge, involved in everything: aerospace, cyber, missiles, the economy. But this multiplicity of duties, as the sources put it, distracted them. Their core counterintelligence mission suffered, and sidelining the more experienced Moise effectively, quote, laid down a red carpet for the Mossad. It helps explain how Israel managed so many successful operations deep inside Iran.
Okay, that internal dysfunction explains the vulnerability. But then there's the question of Iran's reaction. After getting hit so hard, especially at Natanz, why was their response apparently so weak? No major immediate retaliation.
Yeah, that's a real puzzle, and even Israeli experts don't fully agree on the answer, according to our sources. Some argue Iran simply didn't have the capability for a truly comparable tit-for-tat strike against Israel, given Israel's defenses. Others think Iran is playing a longer game. Strategic patience, just waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity to hit back effectively.
What supports the idea that they were just holding back, waiting?
Well, Mir Litvak, a professor over at Tel Aviv University, points to Iran's history. Think about their limited response after the U.S. killed Qasem Soleimani, the Quad's force commander. A huge blow, but the retaliation was contained. Litvak suggests they might be waiting until they can hit harder from Syria or some other proxy avenue. He warns it's not smart to try to embarrass them into acting rashly.
And the other side of that argument, that they couldn't respond effectively.
Ori Goldberg from Reichman University takes that view. He argues the Iranians didn't have many good options for vengeance. Hitting Israel directly is very risky. He also suggests the Iranian public wasn't necessarily clamoring for immediate revenge, reducing internal pressure. His advice to Israel was basically, be careful not to get carried away with these tactical wins without considering the long-term strategic picture.
So pulling it all together, what was the immediate strategic outcome for Israel from this period of intense activity?
The sources are pretty blunt about Israel's perspective. They believed Khamenei and Fakhrizadeh, Iran's top nuclear scientist, had this dark plot to use those advanced centrifuges for a quick sprint to a bomb. And that plot, thanks to actions like the Natanz strike, was now off the table for the foreseeable future. The Mossad had, again, blown up these plans, and Iran's hoped for leverage for negotiations. It forced Fakhrizadeh and the program leads to rethink everything.
And there were also political dimensions swirling around this back in Israel, involving Mossad Director Cohen and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
That's right. Interesting timing, perhaps. Just after the Natanz operation, Netanyahu announced he was extending Eli Cohen's term as Mossad chief for another 6 months, until June 2021. The sources raise the question, was the timing politically motivated? Netanyahu reportedly favored Cohen over other Mossad chiefs he'd worked with. Extending Cohen's term could be seen as Netanyahu indirectly taking credit for the Natanz success, maybe shifting public focus away from controversial domestic issues like the stalled West Bank annexation. It was a gamble, potentially risking Iranian retaliation. But maybe that's where the Homeland Shida's story came in handy as a way to muddy the waters, lower Israel's public profile regarding the attack.
What an incredible sequence of events, a real deep dive today. We've seen how that leadership change at the IAEA opened a diplomatic door, and how Mossad, maybe exploiting that internal Iranian intelligence rivalry, launched this wave of damaging covert attacks. Natanz being the prime example, a major setback for Iran's quick path to a potential bomb.
It really does show the complexity, doesn't it? Geopolitics, internal power struggles, intelligence operations, diplomacy, all interacting. How a weakness in one area can create an opportunity in another. It shows domestic political choices can have massive, unintended national security consequences.
So as you reflect on all this, here's something to think about. Beyond just Iran's nuclear program, consider this. In today's world, with cyber warfare, disinformation, covert ops, how much of what gets reported is just accidents or isolated incidents might actually be deliberate moves. Moves on a much bigger hidden chessboard, something to definitely mull over.